Less than 5 years old and 30 years of experience.
Welcome to the special meeting for Charter Township of Comstock, Wednesday, January 14th, 2026. This meeting is now called to order. May we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looking for a motion for approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Beauchamp, supported by Trustee Pratt. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No opposes. Agenda is approved. Moving along to public comments on agenda and non-agenda items. A citizen may state their name and address and may speak only one time for no more than 3 minutes. This time may not be given to another citizen to extend their time. The person speaking has the floor. No other citizen shall speak during someone else's time. During this time, you will be making statements to the board without discussion from board members, but you are welcome to make an appointment with a supervisor or superintendent to discuss your comments further. Their contact information is located by the door. Please keep comments clean and respectful.
Hi, Tammy Keeler, Salary Street. There's one thing that's got to stop, these attacks against Sandy. I read a FOIA with something in it. I'm not going to mention what it was, but it's got to stop. And there's one person here that knows what it was about. You know, and then Mr. Hess, I see he's not here tonight, he asked to be relieved in February. But instead, you guys give him a raise. Why'd you give him a raise? To keep him here? I also read that. And the documents that were signed by Clerk Beauchamp, Mr. Thompson, and himself are not notarized. And he's never been sworn in. This stuff has to stop about Sandy, because it's really irking me that somebody can put that out there in a FOIA. And this is why the two are at each other's throats, because of one person. I'm tired of reading accusations about Sandy. Sandy's doing a good job. Ben's doing a fine job. Mr. Amos is doing a fine job. Mr. McGyver, he's doing a good job. But the rest of you, you can go as far as I'm concerned, because this stuff has to stop. And I don't know what kind of church they go to. My nephew goes to the same church as they do, and I think it's hypocritical what they're doing. If they can't see in God's eyes, I don't know if it's a cult church or what kind of church it is. I got a call from my nephew. Somebody likes calling him and telling him my problems. He does not live in Comstock. He lives in Battle Creek. I am tired of it. I don't get along with him as it is. because he's just as conniving as they are. I am tired of it. I'm really fed up with these people on this board that can sit there, put accusations out like that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any further citizen comments this evening?
Yeah, sure is. How could I live? Hi there. So funny thing is happening, so you were all spying always on Ben with the Facebook. But then one of my friends sent me a Facebook repost saying, what you guys right now conspired against me and Adam not to talk to us. Do you realize it's a Fifth Amendment you cannot claim? You cannot claim Fifth Amendment and be on your board. And by the way, I gotta serve 4 of you for meeting at the wrong place at the wrong time.
No, that was here. No,
Yeah, for sure you don't. Keep going,
we're not doing that. This was not the place to do this. No, it's not.
Oh, yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Enjoy it, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further citizen comment this evening?
Yes, I live at 303 Frederick here in Comstock. My wife has informed me mostly what's the battle that's going on, and in this country, I certainly think we need to start working together and not against each other. But what she's told me that there's questions about the superintendent and going to politicians. As a person that studied being an educator initially, that I truly believe a superintendent should be an educator, someone that's been involved in education, that wants to be an educator, not a politician. The other thing I understand is that there was a lawsuit that was put in that one of the members on the board is still going in, and I pay taxes, and I've been here over 30 years. I truly believe if you're being paid by the township with taxes, that the lawsuit should probably be dropped especially if you are currently in leadership and being paid by the township. But that's the 2 biggest points. I mean, educating primarily, I didn't end up being a teacher, but I studied to be a teacher. And I think it's very important that superintendent position should be someone that's an educator, someone that's not a politician, not an agenda. We're here to teach the kids the best we can. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments this evening? If there are no further comments, we'll be moving along with business. This evening, we have a FOIA appeal. Attorney Thal?
All right, thank you. So the first item we have here is a FOIA appeal. This appeal is regarding FOIA request 25-100. And the request came in from John Paver on December 3rd, received December 4th. The first day for counting of the days to respond is December 5th. There was a 10-day extension taken, which takes us to December 29th to respond to the FOIA. It was not responded to until the 31st, so it was technically 2 days late on response. There was a response made within that time frame, but it didn't cover all of the items that were requested. So I've provided you the request. The December 31st letter contains his request and then our FOIA coordinator's response to that request. And then on the 29th, when it was due, Mr. Paver then sent an email to the township saying, that it's overdue and basically appealing the lack of provision of the documents to him. And then There was a response back on the 31st providing the Clark Hill report to him, but there's other documents that still have to be collected and reviewed. They're referred to in the December 31st letter. If you go to the end, talks about, there's about the IT, they could tell you how many emails are in response to it. There are about 576 items that would need to be pulled with regard to the additional things that have been requested. And so he did receive his letter on the 31st. There was a fee, estimated fee that goes along with it that was $850 to review the 576 items and pull them from the IT and for potential redaction. So there's an estimate, those are estimated fees, and per FOIA, there can, any fee more than $50, we can collect a good faith deposit of 50%. So the letter requested the 50% deposit on that amount, and the appeal, as I take it now, the appeal is really on the fee issue. He's been provided the Clark Hill letter. The other documents will be collated and collected as indicated in the letter. It's really, a request to resolve the issue with fees. By law, each day that it's late, there has to be a 5% reduction in fees. So that would be 10% reduction in the fee amount that would be due. And, so based on that, there would be a reduction in the fee by $170 automatically. And with that, I would let Mr. Paver come up to the podium if he wants to, and he can present his appeal. Thanks. John?
All right. Thank you. Appreciate everybody. So like Robert said, that was a part of it. And then I would just like, if possible, if there could be some clarification on it, because there wasn't in the 576 emails, there wasn't any segmentation on what those were or what they covered. And my request also included if there was any video or audio that would have been used. I know that went under the attorney-client privilege, but if the incident was in the township building and I requested the video for it, wouldn't that still just fall under standard FOIA practices? And so I should still be able to get that, even despite the fact that it may have been provided to the Clark Hill law firm. So if we can get some clarification on the redundancy there, because that's a part of it, because there's some things that.
Yeah, so the response would provide, if there is audio, video, then, it would be part of that response back.
In the 576.
Yeah, I don't know if it exists or not.
Okay, yeah, and that was my other thing too, because really in the FOIA coordinator's email, it doesn't explicitly state whether or not what those are for, whether things exist or don't exist. And so that would help shed some light on this further if we knew whether things existed or not, because if this is like 500 emails and it goes to something that's not really pertinent to the thing, then it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to pay for money for something that is only pertaining to one aspect. But like for the video, if an incident happened here, that would be available and wouldn't be under the attorney-client privilege. Robert, you would know better than me, but that it's covered in part there because it was handed to somebody, if it does exist or not exist. And then if it does exist, does that fall under my same FOIA, or do I have to create another FOIA to request the video or audio?
No, so the things that you requested, and because you requested a number of other things.
Yes.
Communications regarding the Clark Hill report, agenda placement.
Yep.
Communications related to the treasurer's office, deputy treasurer, dates, and you gave a month date, and if there's more relevant to it, you ask for the more that's relevant to it.
Okay.
An expansion of those dates.
So,
a draft agenda, underlying materials related to the report. Yep. And so when the FOIA coordinator looked at this, that's, I can say that she came up with equal to about 576 items from that request.
Was that items or emails? That's what wasn't clarified.
Yeah, she says that your request communications, emails, agenda references, that equals about 576 items. So
Okay.
that's probably, would include any kinds of emails.
Okay.
I would assume that what they did is they would ask the IT department to pull any materials that reference the things you asked for.
Yes.
And they come back and say, there'll be 576 items that will come up under your request.
Yeah.
And that's really where that comes from.
Okay, that's what was the clarification. It's like, is it 576 emails for the whole month? That makes sense to me, or are we talking specifically items and emails? Are they coalesced together?
Yeah, I think your whole request is together, but
Yes.
it came up with 576 items. I'm not sure
Okay.
exactly what those items
Yeah.
are. You know, it could be video. If there's video, then that would be part of it.
Okay.
If there's other things other than the email poll, it would be part of that.
Okay. So do we think that we're confident in that this is an exhaustive list, or that there might be more?
I think this is a pretty exhaustive list.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so then that'll go back to the crux of what Robert was saying, is that since it was that we made a concerted effort of 2 votes to get it for transparency's sake and for everything, that I think that it's in the best interest then of the community, like people on the board have mentioned several times, and that it makes the most sense for there to be a reduction in fees to 0. So that's that's the request. You know, if we're going to make a concerted effort to vote on it twice and bring it back, and then months and months, and we spent, you know, $44,000 on it, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to, you know, I can't logically explain why it is that we would then tell the community that this is so important that we have to justify a $44,000 expenditure on it, but then we're also going to charge you an additional $850 to find out the substance of the whole claim in and of itself. So that's my request. This is, yeah, I mean,
All right. Well, thank you.
That's pretty much
That's
it.
fine.
Thank you.
So then, you've heard the requests. The $750 or the $850 estimate minus the 2 days is then 170 off of that would be 680. And then the fee that would be requested for the 50% fee would be half of that, so that'd be 340 is what is being requested of Mr. Paver to get these documents that are in this FOIA request. So his request is, you know, basically, as I understand it, in the interest of public transparency, to just release it and not charge any additional fee.
I'll still take the 170 though off.
Yeah, that will come off automatically, no matter what they decide.
Yeah. All right.
So it'd be 340. You don't have to, you could waive the deposit also and just tell him what the cost is when, you know, you could have the materials prepared and then you'd have a dollar amount too at that point. So I don't know how you want to handle that. It's kind of up to the board. Do you want to waive the fee? Do you want to waive the deposit? Do you want to reduce the fee? Those are kind of your options.
Trustee Cherry?
Those are the only options?
Yeah, you can either keep it the way it is.
Okay.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
One option is obviously just to say, no, it's 340 would be the deposit on it. Second option would be to reduce it to some other number. Third option would be to maybe waive the deposit, but still require the fee when it's ready. And the fourth option, I guess, would be to just waive the fee altogether. So you have a number of different options to consider.
Any questions?
Questions, no comments. So are we ready for comments or no?
Maybe we could take questions and then do comments?
Yeah, I have no questions.
Any questions from any board members? Trustee Cherry, comment? Terry, did you have something?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd like
I'd like to hear what some of the rest of the board members say before I open my mouth. But, all right, I think, you know, it would be my hope that we could get this resolved in whatever amicable fashion that needs to be done in. But going forward after this, I think we should consider going back to the way the FOIAs were set up and maintain the way the people, the boards before us had charged for the FOIAs to be returned to the people that introduced them. I guess what I'm saying is, I'd like to get this settled. I think I already said that. But I'd like to look into taking the FOIAs back a few years, or maybe even a year, to charging for what has to be spent to get these FOIAs completed. And that's, at this point, that's about all I can say, just to announce how I feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee McIver. Trustee Cherry?
Well, it's my understanding that everyone else has to pay, just because he's asking for an extensive list. Just because he's just asking for an extensive list of stuff doesn't mean that he should be automatically given the right to not have to pay. Everyone else who's FOIA'd everything is paid. So that is my thoughts on it.
Thank you. Attorney Thaw, is there any instance in the FOIA law where there's any language of when it's a public interest, or is that up for interpretation, or where does that even come into play?
Yes, so it's really up to this board as to what you want to do. I mean, all those options are at your disposal that I mentioned, and anyone, you know, that's up to you. No one of those options is legally any different than any other option. It's really just a policy decision of your board, and whether you think that, you know, it can go into the fact of whether you think it's something that you wanted the public to be more abreast of or aware of, you know, in terms of the report. And these would be the documents supporting that report.
Thank you. Trustee Amos?
I don't have a comment at this time. Thank you.
Trustee Pratt?
Yes. Earlier in the last term, there was a request for information through FOIA, and the board made some exceptions. In the end, though, the monies kept climbing, and after we resolved that, I made a comment that I couldn't go forward and have that happen again. So we have a basis here for determining the number of pages, the amount for cost and everything, and again, for the taxpayers' dollars that we're voting on for this in our township. I can't concede any additional fee waiver outside of what our attorney mentioned for the lateness of that in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Pratt. Clerk Beauchamp?
The way I look at it is not necessarily if it's in public interest or not, because I think there's public interest in it without question. What goes into a FOIA is a lot of work, a lot of time, and when we're dealing with something that had attorney-client privilege redacted, a lot of that time will be from our attorney's office, so we will still get charged for it. So if we waive this FOIA, it doesn't mean we're not going to pay to have our attorneys go through everything. So though I think, you know, everyone has a right to this information, it does cost money to collect all this, and if you want the information, you kind of have to pay for it.
Thank you, Clerk Beauchamp. In this FOIA request, it does say the complete unredacted Clark Hill report, and that is a matter in the conversation that I don't feel like we got to.
Yeah, because we fulfilled the request to the extent We fulfilled the request. We gave them the redacted version saying that all the public received, or that. you
So
know,
the
that we got.
unredacted part has been denied.
Yeah, that is denied, yeah, to
Okay.
the extent that it's unredacted, but his appeal did not address that issue. And, you know, obviously, if something ended up being redacted in that report, you know, my advice would be that it remain redacted. It was redacted sparingly, the report, and for certain reasons, for attorney-client privilege or to protect, you know, witnesses' names or something like that.
So a matter of this FOIA request 25-100, part of it has been denied. And then the redacted FOIA has been
Yeah,
granted.
he received his response on the 31st, which was 2 days late, but, you know, he did receive that response. And so the only remainder of his appeal is the fees.
Okay, thank you. Treasurer Bloomfield?
I guess I might have missed something here. My understanding is he was waiting for the videos and everything yet with this appeal?
So what happens is you put in your FOIA, and then they have X number of days to respond, and they can take a 10 business day extension, which was done, and then there's a response from the township with regard to it. And they gave the Clark Hill report out under it, but there's a number of different items that are in here. So those other items will take time to collect and to process and to review for possible redaction. And that's what the costs are related to, those costs. And you can ask for a 50% deposit up front before you start to do all that.
Correct.
And that's kind of where we're at now, is the request for the 50% deposit, which would be $340, and whether or not you want to require that or not, before they get into actually pulling all the materials. And it's an estimate of cost. It could be more, could be less.
Correct. Well, as the clerk said, there has been much to do about this report, and I don't have a problem with releasing it for no charge as far as what's in it, because nobody was under oath in it. It's all hearsay. There was nothing really conclusive in it. So that's where I stand with it.
Being that we didn't respond timely, and I've noticed from community members coming to the podium that there was one FOIA in particular that was 90 days, I think we should be timely with our requests, and I would be in favor of waiving the fees. Any further board member comments? So we've heard some.
Wants to make a motion?
We've heard some options on waiving the fees, and then we have the options on full fees or reduction of fees.
I'll make a motion that we waive the fees for the FOIA request for John Paver for the HR attorney report, and that it be released in the timely manner that the law allots.
And I just would.
Go ahead.
Just say that it's more than just he did receive the report. It's all the background materials.
Would you like me to read that, what that all is that he's
Well,
asked for?
I don't think you have to, but
Okay.
it's a long read.
All communications, records, phone calls, texts,
Yeah, I mean, there's.
videos, et cetera.
Yeah,
How's
there's-
that? Yep.
But I thought it was just for the appeal was just for the fees.
Yeah.
So the motion should be just for the fees, correct?
Yeah, because we've responded that we're going to provide him the documents that we have. And so it is just the fees.
Okay, then I'll retract that motion and make another one to waive the FOIA fees for the request.
25-100.
Yep, 25-100 right there. Thank you.
Motion made by Treasurer Bloomfield. Any support? Supported by Trustee Amos. Roll call vote?
Trustee Cherry?
No.
Trustee Pratt?
No.
Clerk Bochamp? No. Trustee Amos?
Yes.
Supervisor Martin?
Yes.
Trustee McIver?
No.
Treasurer Bloomfield?
Yes.
Motion failed.
So we still need action on it. There's no action taken. You need an affirmative motion of what the board wants to do.
I make a motion to waive 75% of the FOIA fees on request number 25-100. Motion made by Supervisor Martin,
Support.
supported by Treasurer Bloomfield. Roll call vote?
Trustee Pratt.
No.
Trustee Amos.
Yes.
Trustee Cherry.
No.
Clerk Bochamp, no. Supervisor Martin.
Yes.
Treasurer Bloomfield.
Yes.
Trustee McIver.
No.
Motion failed.
Be looking for a motion on FOIA request number 25-100 for fees.
I move that we deny the FOIA request to waive the fees for FOIA number 25-100.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Bochamp, supported by Trustee Pratt. Roll call vote?
Trustee Pratt.
Yes.
Trustee Amos.
No.
Trustee Cherry.
Yes.
Supervisor Martin.
No.
Clerk Bochamp, yes. Trustee McIver.
Yes.
Treasurer Bloomfield.
No.
Motion carried.
Okay, Attorney Thal, we have an ethics presentation.
Yep, if you give me a minute, I'm gonna go sit over there so I can.
Step on that, that's trash anyway. Okay.
Yes, you'll get a written notification.
So I think you're all set.
All right, thank you for this opportunity to talk to you about ethics. I've done this presentation numerous times over the years. It's been quite a while since I've done it last, but I've done this for many different municipalities and different meetings. So if you have any questions as I go through it, feel free to ask any questions at any time. It'll be helpful if you do have a question to answer it, or ask it when I'm going through it. So, ethics, it's no joking matter, but, quite often they say ethics in government is an oxymoron, but it really isn't. It's extremely important. It is really the most important thing that you can abide by are ethical standards. If you don't, exercise proper ethics, you lose the trust of the public. And, you just don't want to be put in those types of situations. So ethics comes from a Greek system of moral values. And what it talks about, ethics is morality. It's the difference between right and wrong. And, everybody should know those things, but it's your moral compass and not, you'd think everybody has the same moral compass, but it's not always true. People have a little bit of a different moral compass. And so, in addition to just plain morality of how people should act and behave, you have different codes of conduct depending on the profession. So, attorneys, I have my code of ethics that I have to abide by, the rules of procedure, of responsibility. Accountants have them, engineers have them, and even public officials have professional standards to abide by. And we'll talk about those. Then there's also, in addition to just professional codes and standards of how you should behave, there's also laws that address those things. Laws against embezzlement, laws about entering into contracts that you might have an interest in. There's many different laws regarding conflicts and so forth. And, we'll talk about the different laws that you should keep in mind. So you've got general morality, you've got codes of conduct, and you've got legal requirements. And all three of those things, create an ethical standard by which you as board members need to act. There's 4 basic pillars for ethical behavior by township officials. These are just kind of the framework of, if you abide by these standards, these 4 ethical standards, you're probably going to keep yourself out of trouble. And so it's not overly difficult. There's these 4 principal standards. And, the first is that you must not benefit financially from your position. So, other than the pay you get and the benefits you get from the township, there should be no further benefits that you receive from being a township official. So you can't financially benefit from your position. You must not receive any special benefits by virtue of your position. You must not practice secrecy in decision-making, and that goes to Open Meetings Act and transparency in government and, having your decisions made in front of the public at public meetings. And then, one of the most important ones is to not allow favoritism and bias to cloud your actions. So, everybody comes in with their own background and the, things that happen to them in their life. But when you come up here as a township official, you have to put all your biases aside. You have to put any favoritisms aside. It might be your best friend from high school that is in front of the board, or it could be somebody that you always hated, but you have to treat them in the exact same manner as a board member. You have to put all those things aside, and you're acting on the basis as a township official, not on the basis of what your personal feelings might be or your personal background or bias. So if you follow those four items there, you're going to pretty much stay out of trouble. So as a board member, you have what we call as a fiduciary duty, and fiduciary means trust. So when you're elected as a township board member, the public has put trust in you, and you have this trust obligation to carry forward, again, not for your own self-interest, not for your personal biases, but, as a fiduciary, as the trust the public actually puts in you. So you have to act as a fiduciary when you're elected as the trust of the public, but then also the trust of being a board member. So there's kind of a dual role. You have an obligation to the public, but you also have an obligation to the township itself. You sit on a board of trustees, you manage the township, you're responsible for what goes on in the township. So you do things that don't create liability for the township. You try to exercise your actions with public trust to the people, public trust to the township itself. You're no longer acting, on your own and for your own personal bias. Public officials are trusted with public functions for the good of, the public, to protect and advance and promote the public's interest, not your own. So whenever you're making decisions up here, your thought should be, what's best for the public interest, not what kind of biases you carry with into the job. Everybody has those kind of things, but you have to set all those personal things aside and what's in the best interests of the township. And when you make those decisions, you don't have to, everybody doesn't have to agree on it, but those decisions have to be made in the public's best interest. So some of those things is you generally don't participate in decision-making whenever you have a direct financial gain. So that's one of the most basic things. If you have a direct financial gain from it, you have a conflict of interest, and you should not participate in the decision. And you should even avoid the appearance of impropriety. So a base standard in case law is that as board members, you should try to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. Now, that's not necessarily a legal standard, but it is a standard by which you should try to carry yourself, so that even if it's not legally improper, maybe you should just still try to avoid even that appearance of impropriety. But now in a charter township, it's a little different. So in general law township, you have a duty to vote. In a charter township, you also have a duty to vote, and you cannot be excused from your voting duty unless the board authorizes it. And that's why we've done this in the past. If somebody feels that they are, conflicted, it's a personal matter or whatever it might be, or financial interests, then you can ask the board to be let out from being able to vote. But in a charter township, you cannot just abstain. You can't just say, oh, I got a conflict here, I abstain. You have to announce what that conflict is ask the board to allow you to abstain. And, hopefully the board allows it. If it is interest, that can raise some problems on its own when there is a conflict and the board won't let you abstain. But, that you cross that bridge if you have to. So we talked about code of conduct and the things that go in, we've got morals, code of conduct, and laws. So code of conduct for public service, there's a code of conduct to how you behave as a public official and how you treat the public, how you treat your fellow board members, and how you carry out your job. And so these are the public service values that you would carry out in doing your job, which involves trustworthiness, fairness, treating people fairly, responsibility, doing your job responsibly, respect to everybody, whether you think they deserve it or not, still providing respect, loyalty. And when you talk about loyalty, that's acting in the interest of the township, not yourself. So again, putting your personal issues and personal beliefs or personal benefits aside, you have a loyalty duty to the township in carrying out your job. And then compassion, like you need to be compassionate in what you do. You're public servants, you are here to serve the public, and need to be compassionate in how you carry that out. And those are kind of the public service values, your code of conduct, in terms of, these aren't legal requirements necessarily, there's other legal requirements, but these are things that you are supposed to take to heart in carrying out your job: trustworthy, fairness, responsibility, respect, loyalty, and compassion in carrying it out. What are the ramifications, if you fail to act ethically? There's a number of different ramifications if you do that. Number one, it erodes a public official's authority and influence on public matters. People aren't going to trust what you do. It's going to hang you up with a lot of involvement by the public because they don't trust, it has eroded your authority and influence on public matters where people question what your motives are. So it's really important to act ethically so that you can have that trust of the public. Also, it diverts attention away from pressing policy issues due to the need, the energy needed to defend the questions and conduct. If you spend all your time because there's issues that are arising because potential, people don't trust what's going on, you're spending your time addressing those issues rather than carrying out the important functions that you're elected to do. That's just really important. You have a lot of important business. All township boards have a lot of important business to attend to. Anytime your attention's diverted to other things is attention away from doing what doing your job the best you can. Failure to act ethically can provoke a recall or formidable challenge in the next election. So ultimately, the public has the final say on things. If they feel you act a certain way, then they can, exercise recall or, put people up at the next election. And then ultimately, there's criminal and civil penalties if it's a violation of the law. And we'll talk about some of those different laws. So as we get into ethics, one thing to think about, we'll go through the different statutes now, but one of them is FOIA and Open Meetings Act. So those are what we call sunshine laws. And they were developed to shine light on government, to prevent secrecy in decision-making, to open it up to the public understanding how decisions are made. So, we have, it prohibits decision-making and secrecy, making sure public records can be inspected, and then there's penalties for violations. So, we know and are quite aware, and you're quite aware of Open Meetings Act questions, you can only deliberate and take action in a public meeting. Under Open Meetings Act, freedom of information, there's certain items that you have to provide if people ask for it. There are exemptions from both of those. There's exemptions, how we go into closed session and things of that sort, to consult with your attorney on legal matters, or, it can be going into closed session to discuss an employee review if the employee requests to go into closed session. Freedom of Information has a number of exemptions under Freedom of Information Act, some of which are unreasonable invasions of privacy. So if people, if a request would invade somebody's privacy to an unreasonable degree, those kind of documents can be redacted or denied. But in general, you always want to err on the side of transparency. You always want to err on the side of allowing documents to go out as long as they're not, issues that are legal issues really, but you always want to err on the side of openness, err on the side of, making sure, that you're compliant with Open Meetings Act and maybe going beyond. Same with Freedom of Information Act. You can provide, as we have with this most recent documents that we could say we're not going to disclose that under FOIA, but this board chose in that circumstance to disclose it, which is shedding more light on government actions. So those are kind of the FOIA and OMA are really important, ethical considerations for openness and transparency, earning the trust of the public. And then if you violate it, there's penalties for violations, and some very strict penalties. So, it's something obviously you want to avoid. You want to do things right, and you want to avoid the penalties that are involved there. Another statute that applies ethical considerations to you as board members is the Incompatible Offices Act. And basically under the Incompatible Offices Act, you can't hold multiple positions that are incompatible at the same time. And the statute goes into those, whether you're subordination of one public office to another, supervision of one public office by another, or if holding two public offices would be a breach of public duty. And so that would be if you're on both sides of a contract or something of that sort. So that's just something to think about. I've not heard anything about, various these are like, say you were on the school board and township board and things like that. You'd have to do incompatible offices analysis to see, and you can't just say, well, abstain from voting in this circumstance. Abstention from voting doesn't work. You have to vacate one of the positions. So that's a consideration. I don't know that anybody is involved in that type of situation, but it does come up, and it's something to be aware of if you're looking at other public positions at other entities or otherwise. There is an exception under that act. So it does, however, it doesn't prohibit a public officer or employee in a township that has a population less than 40,000. So that's Comstock Township falls within that. And that's just recognizing that in smaller communities, sometimes people have to wear multiple hats sometimes. In a larger community, you can find the people to do the job. Smaller communities, the legislature said less than 40,000. Sometimes you can carry in two different positions. So in Comstock Township, because we're less than 40,000, it doesn't prohibit somebody from serving as an emergency medical personnel, from serving as a firefighter. So you could be on the board and be a firefighter and not have incompatible offices, because it's an exception to that because of the size of the township. If you were over 40,000, that would be a violation. And then there's some other restrictions in there, but, and then ultimately the board, because you're less than 40,000, the board can authorize board members to perform additional services for the township. So say somebody did snow plowing or whatever, different positions at the township, whether it be cemetery sexton or something, you could be a board member and then they could assign you an additional duty to be the cemetery sexton or something like that. So that's not a violation of the incompatible offices because you're less than 40,000. More than, you couldn't serve multiple roles within the township. Political activities of public employees. So there's sections that specifically address political activities of public employees. These are some things to keep in mind. I don't know that I need to go through each one of these provisions here, but certainly take a look at that in terms of what type of political activities that your employees can be involved in. It's also on page 10 to then, a township employee may not engage in political activities during work hours. And so that, a township employee is elected to an office within the local unit shall resign and be granted leave of absence from employment during the elected term. So if you were in a different position in the township, you get elected, you'd have to resign from that position. In your case, because of your size of your township, they can reassign that job to you, but that's up to the board to be able to assign the extra duties. There's specific provisions to be aware of as a public employer. Public employee or elected appointed official may not personally or through an agent coerce, attempt to coerce, or command another public employee to pay, lend, or contribute anything of value to a party, committee, organization, agency, or person for the benefit of a person seeking or holding elected office, or for the purpose of furthering or defeating a proposed law, ballot question, or other measure that may be submitted to a vote of the electors. So you have to be careful, as elected officials, you can't basically solicit employees to support your campaign or, things of that sort. Another thing to be aware of as board members, you cannot use township assets to promote your own elections or promote ballots or ballot proposals. So you have to be really careful of that you're not expending township resources. So if you're in the township office, you can't, do election activities out of your township office. That's an example. So just keep those things in mind. You have contracts of public servants and public entities. There's a whole statute on that. So if you were to enter into a contract with yourself or were proposing a contract with the township on your own or through a company that you represent as yourself or entity where you're a member, partner, or employee, any private corporation in which you're a director, officer, or employee, any private corporation in which you're a stockholder owning more than 1% of the stock, if not listed on the stock exchange, or stock with a present market value in excess of $25,000, if the stock is listed on the stock exchange, or a trust in which you're a beneficiary or trustee, you can't approach the township in that regard and solicit a contract for whatever you might be doing with those other businesses. So again, it's trying to preserve ethical behaviors, and these are some of the laws that preserve that ethical behavior, making sure that you're not going to participate in a contract with the township. The township could still enter into those contracts, you just cannot solicit it and be involved in trying to negotiate it in any manner. And then there's, again, from the contract with public servants, so say you had a snowplow company, you want to make a contract with the township to plow out the public, the parks and so forth, you'd have to abide by this contracts of public services, servants provision. And now, again, because of your population size, and this one is 25,000, the prohibition on being a party to a contract does not prohibit a public servant of a township with a population of less than 25,000, which Comstock is, from serving as emergency medical service personnel, serving as a firefighter in the township, as long as that person is not a full-time firefighter, fire chief, or person who negotiates with the township on behalf of the firefighters, or performing other additional services for the township as approved by the township board. So again, the board could, if you did have another business or whatever, and you wanted to contract with the board, because of your size, you could do that. You just can't be the party standing there soliciting the contract. You'd have to abstain from that, and the board members would have to vote on it without your participation. I'm not going to go into more detail on that. I mean, if this situation arises, then there are more standards. There's a couple pages devoted to the additional standards for contracts of public servants and public entities. So I'm not going to go further into that. So on page 16, that brings us to the standards of conduct. So when I look at these standards, to me, these are really the meat and potatoes of what your ethical framework should be. Now, I have to say, there's the statute, it's the Standards of Conduct for Public Officers and Employees Act. It does not apply specifically to township officials. And so that is issue. It applies for the purpose of a whistleblower. So if a whistleblower says, hey, you're violating one of these standards, you can't take action against that employee. That's the only way that this statute applies. It does, none of the penalties apply to board members if they violate any of these rules. So that's when we talk about sometimes doing ethics policies, ethics ordinances, because the state law applies to state employees and the standards of conduct they have to, and if they violate it, they're in violation of the statute. As it applies to township officials, if you violate it, the statute doesn't apply to you. It only applies in the context of a whistleblower action, where if somebody said, oh, they took an improper gift, and now they've, taken employment action against me because I brought that to light, this statute can punish the township for doing that. But otherwise, it doesn't have any teeth in it in terms of regulating what your conduct is. But they're really good standards, so let's kind of go through those standards. These standards, set forth the ethical framework. It prohibits the divulging of confidential information or to unauthorized persons. So, duty of loyalty, those kinds of things that we're talking about. Representing personal opinions instead of the township. So when you go out, you can say stuff on your own, but you need to clarify if you're speaking to the road commission. Say you go and speak to the road commission about something. Unless this board has sent you to speak to the road commission, you have to clarify that I am not, I may be, I'll just say township supervisor. I may be the township supervisor, but I'm not representing the township here today. So those types of things should be clarified so that other entities that deal with you know when it's your own personal opinion or when it's the township actually asking you to go to the planning commission or the road commission and make a statement or something. And also, one thing to be careful about is using, say, township stationery and things like that. So if you send out something on official township stationery signed as, township in your official position, there's a presumption that you're representing the township when you do that. So you don't really want, if it's your personal opinion that you're sending out, don't use stuff that identifies you as a township official, because that carries with it the connotation that it's a township action, not just your personal opinion. Another thing is not to waste township resources. So this prohibits you from wasting township resources or to use township resources for personal benefit. Also then solicitation and acceptance of gifts, which tend to influence. So, it's, so different. Normally when we do a policy, we'll set a limit and say, yeah, a vendor could provide you a lunch or whatever it might be, or, a certain dollar amount, less than $50, I think is what the state requires. But anything more than that, it's like what would tend to influence people. And so, we don't have any standard for that. But if you had a policy, you could have a standard for that. Business transactions where profit occurs from the official position or benefit occurs from confidential information. I mean, again, these are prohibitions. You can just follow these things and abide by them and stay out of trouble. But again, if you were to violate one, there's no specific penalty with the standards of conduct, these standards are often cited, but a lot of times people don't realize that they do not apply as a legal standard to the township officials. Subject to limited exception, engaging in employment that is incompatible or in conflict with official duties or that may impair independent judgment. With limited exception, engaging in negotiation, execution, or supervision of contracts relating to a business where there's a financial or personal interest. So again, on next page, the act, again, is intended as a code of ethics, not as a rule of law for public contracts. The act is applied to township officials and employees, and as we've discussed, it has no sanctions for violations of the provisions, just the whistleblower sanctions. If an employee reported a violation of one of those ethical standards and you took adverse action against them as a board, then they could claim whistleblower protection. But that's really the only way it applies. And this standard, this slide goes over the whistleblower protection. If a public employee who reports or is about to report a violation shall not be subject to the following as a result of this action: dismissal from employment, withholding of salary increases that are ordinarily forthcoming, withholding of promotions that are ordinarily forthcoming, demotion in employment status, or transfer of employment location. So those are some of the actions that you would not be able to take against a whistleblower. And then there's a civil fine associated with a violation. So that kind of brings us to, what do you do? These don't apply necessarily to us. So, normally I suggest a township adopt its own ethics policy, and it can pick up the state law policy, but adopt its own ethics policy, setting forth the ethical standards and sanctions for a violation of those standards. So a violation of an ethical policy would normally be enforceable against employees, so the employees are all subject to it through disciplinary measures. If an employee violates it, the action can be taken with that. The issue with board members is there's not really much that can be done to a board member. So a policy, if you violate the policy, shame on you for violating it, but what action can be taken, right? I mean, very little can be taken. You can't be fired from your job. The only people that can fire you is the public. Or if there are certain circumstances where the governor can remove you, but it's under very extreme circumstances. And I don't know that it's ever been, I'm not aware of it ever being done or used, but there is a provision in the law for that. If a township wants to put more bite behind ensuring ethical conduct and to provide sanctions applicable to even elected officials, it could adopt an ethics ordinance. A violation of the ethics ordinance could entail a misdemeanor charge or a municipal civil infraction. So you could put more teeth behind the ethics ordinance, which then it's applicable because a violation can, bring a legal action where you would be civilly liable and fined, or it could be a misdemeanor. I would not do it as a misdemeanor. I would say if you did something like that, if you did an ethics ordinance, you'd make it a civil infraction. And if somebody were to violate that, a board member, then the township could take action and treat it as a civil infraction and ticket you essentially for it. And you could have a fine through the courts or otherwise. So those are kind of the two follow-up things, to think about. Then we have miscellaneous penalty statutes. So I said, okay, there's certain laws that, exist also. So there is a penalty statute for neglect of duty, fiduciary duty, embezzlement, commingling funds, extension of credit and non-public use of funds, custody of records, and Whistleblower Protection Act all provide penalty statutes. Neglect of duty, there's a statute that says, if you neglect your duties, when a public official willfully neglects duties, each willful neglect and performance results in a misdemeanor, up to 1 year in jail and up to $1,000 fine. That's got to be pretty serious neglect of duty before a prosecutor would engage in that. But it is a option where people are not doing the jobs they're supposed to be doing. So this punishment exists where there's not already another punishment in the statute. But it's going to have to be a really serious violation for a prosecutor to want to take action under that. But it is an available statute. There's a statute on false statements published in relation to township finances by an official or employee are misdemeanor offenses. Officials or employees juggling the funds or issuing false checks or vouchers are guilty of misdemeanor offenses. embezzlement. Public funds paid to a township's collecting officer must be placed directly into an appropriate fund for the collected fees. Embezzlement or failure to apply monies in appropriate accounts is punishable by a fine of up to 5 years of imprisonment. Commingling funds and illegal expenditures. All funds received by an official whereby the law authorizes receipt are considered public funds, must be kept separate from the official's own funds or funds of another person or corporation. Funds must be used in accordance with the law and not for personal use. No official may receive anything of value as inducement for deposit of funds in any particular bank. And violations of these provisions are misdemeanor that carry fine and potential imprisonment. Extension of credit, there's another statute on this. A board member or employee may not purchase items in the name of the township or on the township credit card, except in the course of official business. A board member or employee may not sell or offer for sale items purchased for a price higher than what would be charged the general public. And a violation of this is also misdemeanor. Custody of records. All records must be available for inspection upon request. No files may be removed from the public office for inspection except by order of the court or audit purposes. Reasonable rules may be made for the inspection of public records in order to protect the records. And in that regard, we have our FOIA rules, for getting records or viewing records. And then finally, we just have the Whistleblower Protection Act, which I talked a little bit about before. An employer may not fire or threaten an employee who reports a violation of the law. An employee must show clear and convincing evidence that they were about to report and were damaged by the employer for that reason. Employee protection under this act must be posted in the workplace for whistleblower protection. So, I mean, all these things together, kind of make up those ethical standards, the framework, the core principles are all kind of brought into those things that would be violations, those things that would be the standards of ethical conduct, and, just how you should behave and earn the trust of the public, through exercise of those ethical provisions. So with that, I guess I would just ask if you have any questions on any of that.
Yeah, I have a question. Could you explain as far as board member contact with things pertaining to due process, like rezones, special exemption, those instances where board members should refrain from conversation with the public, and then instances like conflict resolution, helping residents, working with them, kind of the differentiation between the two?
Yeah, and so, I've talked to the planning commission about this. I don't know if I've talked to the township board about it, but in terms of engaging in conversation with applicants or people that have rezones or, conditional land uses, other things that may be coming before the board for consideration, people asking for permits or other things of that sort, they're due process. And so in those circumstances, you have to be very careful to not have outside conversations with people in that regard, because it could taint the due process. And, so it's very important. We have staff that is, for zoning, we have zoning staff. If people have zoning applications, zoning questions that they want to go forward with, all those things should be directed to staff. They're not the decision makers. They're the administrative arm that, will assist this board, but it takes you out of the issues that can arise when you have ex parte or outside of the boardroom conversations with people on permits or other things that they may coming before the board to ask permission for. In those circumstances, they're due process, impartial decision maker, and so it cuts both ways. For the person who wants the permit, when they do that, they've automatically put their permit in jeopardy, because then the public or whoever could sue and say, hey, there was some undue influence in granting that. So it's not, it cuts that way, and then on the other side, if you deny it, and you've had conversations and other communications on that subject matter with people and saying, I've had situations where board members were like, under no circumstance will I ever approve, X, Y, and Z, and then that matter comes forward, they are no longer an unbiased decision maker and have to abstain. If they don't abstain, then they're going to put that whole decision in jeopardy. The applicant sues, and you normally will lose a case like that. So that's something to keep in mind, that you always want to be trying to help people, but the best help you can do on like zoning, planning kinds of things is to refer them to our administrative staff to deal with those issues. The other issues like community issues and, being out there, obviously your board members, you feel obligation to serve the public. You want to be out there, you want to be helping. And on things that aren't, say, permit related, things that aren't something that the board's going to act on, those kind of things that you can obviously engage the public in those discussions about those things that mean something to them. Or it could be conflict resolution, things of that sort. You could be involved in that. Now, as board members, you're all trustees, so you do all have a fiduciary duty to oversee that the township's behaving in a certain manner. Now, it doesn't mean that you have the right to interfere in any office's duties, so if it doesn't, so you have to be mindful of that. If you're trying to involve yourself in a situation, am I overstepping, or am I just trying to figure out how the township is handling this matter? As a fiduciary, I want to know, is it being handled properly? Is it not being handled properly? Who in administration should I talk to? And then, if ultimately you have a superintendent, you can work through your superintendent if you feel like staff is not, appropriately addressing something. The appropriate way is not for you to, really address the staff if they're not, if it's some kind of inappropriate behavior. It would be to go talk to the superintendent. And ultimately, how the superintendent does his job is then something for this, this board's consideration and maybe annual review or something of that sort, to determine how well they handle certain circumstances. Does that answer your question?
It does. I think the general public, when they have a business matter at hand and then you tell them like, hey, I really can't talk to you about that, it's hard for them to understand that. I think that's a misconception, but it is ultimately, if they want their project to move forward, it's best that we don't talk.
Yeah, it cuts both ways. I mean, it cuts negative. If you do, it cuts negatively to the developer or person that wants to do something. It also cuts negatively, if you deny it, you're always putting those decisions at risk and up for legal challenge. And again, that goes to the whole, some of the principles that we talk about, of loyalty, your duties of loyalty to the township, duties of loyalty to the public. You don't want to put the township in a position where it's going to get sued. Like, be mindful of that, and the things that you do, you don't want to create liabilities for the township. It's a liability for the township, but that always ends up, it's a liability for the public. I mean, if you get hit with, a big lawsuit or a big judgment or something, that ends up, being paid for by the public. So those are things to think about.
Thank you, Attorney Thal. Any board member questions?
No questions. I'm pretty set on my ethics. I know my character and integrity, and I can look myself in the mirror every night and know I did the right thing. So, yeah, it was great training. So thank you.
Yeah, and I just will say this as a caveat. It's not intended to be, it's not specific to this board. This is the same presentation I do all over,
It's always helpful to be reminded.
Yeah, and
that we should be doing the right thing regardless. And then the right thing is not always the easy thing. That's
right.
That's the bad thing.
Yeah, and just keeping mindful of these these concepts in your mind. It's not always easy to put personal bias, things that you spent your whole life thinking a certain way, and having to put that all aside and say, okay, now what's really best for the township citizens, and thinking about it in that manner.
Yeah.
Trustee Amos, anything?
I'm good, thank you.
Trustee Pratt?
Not tonight.
Clerk Bochamp?
Anything?
Trustee McIver? Treasurer Bloomfield?
Just one thing. I'm sitting here thinking, listening, and I'm going, what's in your mind and on your heart is usually what's on your lips. So that's what guides ethics, in my opinion. Thank you.
Attorney Thal, anything else for us?
No, just, no.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Moving along to closed session. Be looking for a motion to enter closed session.
I move that the Township Board meet in a closed session under Section 8(1)H of the Open Meetings Act pursuant to Section 13(1)G of the Freedom of Information Act to consult with our attorney regarding a written legal opinion.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Bochamp, supported by Trustee Pratt. Any discussion? I have a question. As far as when we make our motion to go into closed session, it's kind of typically a neutral motion. Sometimes our motion's a little more characterized.
When you go into, when we go into close, sometimes it is more characterized, depending on what reason you're going to close session on. But when you go into closed session for an attorney-client privilege communication, we don't normally divulge anything about it. It's all confidential. Even the topic is confidential. Versus other things that you might go into closed session for personnel review, you might have to say, we have a personal review of so-and-so. If they want, we can go into closed session. And so there's a general kind of understanding of that. But, in terms of attorney-client privilege memorandums and going to closed session, there's a reason that we don't disclose anything about it, because it's all confidential. And again, it's for the protection of the township is why we do that.
And my question would be, I think I have a neutral way of framing this then. Is there any matter of what we're going into closed session for today, any part of it, if not all of it, that could be handled in open session?
No, because what I'm giving you is attorney advice and guidance. You don't take, and the public should understand this too, you cannot take any action in a closed session. Okay, so I can advise you in a closed session, but you can't take any action. Okay, any actions you take have to be done in an open meeting. So that's where the Open Meetings Act comes in, that's where the transparency comes in. But for me to advise you, it's my opportunity to give you legal advice. It's just like if you went to see a private attorney, your neighbor's not going to sit in on the meeting with you. You're a township body, a township board, and we're going to go into closed session to discuss matters that are legal and could create liabilities for the township. And on that basis, you don't want to talk about my advice publicly unless, it's part of an action to be taken. So there's no action that we taken in a closed session. It's just discussion. So if you were to take any actions on anything I talk about, those things would have to be discussed and talked about in public.
Thank you, Attorney Thaw. We have a motion by Clerk Bochamp, and then we have a second by Trustee Pratt. Roll call vote.
Trustee Amos?
No.
Trustee Pratt?
Yes.
Trustee Cherry?
Yes.
Clerk Bochamp, yes. Supervisor Martin?
Yes.
Treasurer Bloomfield?
No.
Trustee McIver?
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. We are entering closed session.
I'll try not to knock you over, Sandy.
No, you aren't going to.
back there, so they just come out here and vote.
I'm a four. I'm four. The court wanted to get him. I asked him to be a I had to go once I heard everybody else's as a board. I thought, and the other hand, I passed it out. You know, that is right. Yeah. And so, I said, I was over.
If it comes down there now, I have,
And I
like to do it now, the cameras, but I actually.
everybody wants to how they read it. I calculated it.
And I'll tell you what, if it comes down there, if you want, I won't just push him.
Just overlost this one.
I don't care if I want him. That's right. At this point, because he's already talking to me. That's the thing.
Less and less go to the middle school, and less and less go to the high school.
It's just like,
STEM
it was, just we were there. We went to that court. They have so
Why do you think that?
I've heard
the old courthouse had been lighted so
for years. So I have
and then ran into his house.
And I put my rubber gloves over those. And that's
Yeah, well, last year, I don't know, I know. Yeah. So I'm out there, because it doesn't run when it's open, so you don't know. The thermostat tries to have it run some trips, right? So, and I'm out there like trying to get wires and like, just, I mean, you're like, he's really easy.
This is funny about
Over 200 municipalities.
I'm not. And
why when I look at the glasses, I've been hit by bigger people. They bounce through.
highest grade by 60%. Don't cover. I did terrible that says, why do you think that?
She said, I think that's wrong. I'm talking about 30-something% of the students. I broke it up into so that's
But what really upset me was the oak trees across the street that hit my life. I said, that's just very sad. It's such a beautiful place. Now it looks like we line of guys, every once in a while branches. But I don't even know where to do it.
So then I was like, I'm gonna go through the justice route. And so I did that for a little bit. My cousin was in,
Honestly, Dave,
she was in,
I'm already able to
she lived here.
You're close, you're in between. Yeah. My son's here.
My cousin lived here and she died.
As far as I'm concerned, John,
was like, okay, well, I'm not letting her go.
and she's already said maybe.
So then I was like, well,
So we can go to our house.
so I was hoping to bring all the stuff to the airport. My grandfather's going to be in the university.
Funny thing is, I told her,
There is some money.
There's a sentiment of like, for me, there's and,
Still a lot of acres.
Over half my wife's horse pasture and our barn is our
Old school, good.
She's like, wow. My daughter's close enough, but she wanted to go. So I went out for like 5 years for a little bit. Started working for me. She wanted to buy the house now. I don't have 500 grand to sit around and buy a house. So she could have a horse. Yes. Yeah, at least 5 acres.
Yeah.
So anyway.
We, she's almost 12, but she did camping in last year at Hayward. And like made a little robotics. And so like she programmed to like go and it would wash and teach. And then like she had to, but like she programmed the whole thing on a jump thread that we have home. And then I did my city and we recently summer. And we go to Hayward and that whole like area and not Hayward, but like the business culture and my daughter also was for that whole area. And that was neat. We made like wax paper out of whatever, just like it was 14 years old and just like learning stuff. And how can we get this water clear with just this? So I had to get Camilla involved.
My daughter is like she would have got a nanny and stayed with her all day long. She was kind of an girl horse. She doesn't want to send it. She said, I don't want to. I don't want to horse.
There are plenty of them. And I'm out to the bars, and I'm like, I'm gonna be a horse.
Yeah, and that was the other reason I had to drive her there every morning and everything.
Yeah, well, that's what they told me last time. Yeah, for her to decide, because they're expensive.
The guy has like,
Ours are just, pasture pumpkins, so one is a residence, so one of them is an old Amish cart horse, like something in
or something.
nice little guy, but he's like a bomb, like I got him, I saw him, well, yeah, wants to be able to ride, so he doesn't have to be wet, he busted my knuckles, so we went, there was a video that you can watch and you just claim them and you pay the fee, but it's not all they got paid $700. Right. And, but they said he was 16 and I got him, but that's
Yeah, he's kind of old.
yeah, but it's fine. He's a good boy. I call him Jack because he hit the jackpot.
How long does he look?
But he just lives a tired life out in our house, playing grass, and every once in a while we let him to climb on him and we get him guys around.
Yeah, my daughter, we used to go
Backstory, 2014, my mom sold people, that's her product, going all the way down to Marlin. All those power lines, gas lines, everything like that, runs up, that's my property. We've always small consumers, they have a lot of property, cut trees, and they came and put 2 gas substations.
It's just like, what's his name, go back there and grab it an apple.
Which is interesting, I guess it's not always true, but like the idea that,
Trying to decide whether, like, how much longer I'm gonna wait this out.
education, not only like, is how you survive, not only just survive, but also like live longer. You, like, there are all these like associated things that you don't think that.
It's relaxing. Watching everyone fight up there, it's just there.
Happiness in marriage, and the job you do raising children.
Yeah, truly.
You know, you're scary if you're the number. You popped me like Breaking Bad, like when that came out.
The first time they don't have somebody else they let me in car. You know what I mean? It's so hard. I've always struggled with it.
And this was before
Kids that are gifted, like teachers that are ahead. But then it's like, I still hear teachers that kind of.
Well, I still turn a lot of stuff.
I know you would agree. I believe you would appreciate this a lot. At the middle school, they have
So they just said their days. He didn't want to read one about
Well, what cross? Just wait till I see text of my husband's driving. Tell her to cross the street. She's, I'll call you right back.
Yeah, but they did actually back when we did that, that was so that they could.
The next place you find, turn around, don't stop and go left, look both ways, we'll go. We were so far southbound that Jerry, in all of his years of cleaning, had never been that far southbound. That's really bad. Worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah, you'll do fine.
if they still read racing magazines and are big sentences on
Helping them out when she wanted to measure. The one night she
they never wanted to.
trying to
And just like thinking about like a lot of my, just even like passive ones.
And the next day, she was the one that went in.
Kids and half of them that like, we always
And they
like
shut
our
it down.
daughter and I would make
No more Red Lobster.
but,
Well, and yeah, oh, that was, I know, it was about, keep the, my phone is dead because Verizon standard broken.
When I
Broken.
interested.
Your phone is broken?
Verizon, it's been an SOS.
There's a nationwide outage.
Yeah,
I guess my mom has a kid.
so like, it's just, it's a spread.
The guy's kid in school.
Like, unless you have Wi-Fi.
It's just
It started at 5:30. It started at 5:30. That's when the news was.
I would say about 6:45, 7 o'clock.
No.
I'm trying to use the satellite. It says you can send a text message.
30 bucks.
schedule.
My mother-in-law messaged that says she can tell my wife she's not.
Like the schedule thing, see if we're gonna like rerun stuff, they had to open it at 5:30.
Yeah, yes, sure. I think it's on the table. I will.
It's closed session.
Yeah, so and then it'll be, that might be a little easier.
Yeah, closed session and public, and then member comments are.
Oh, it does have number count?
We still have another chance.
I know, this is swing out enough.
And they're all here.
So at least now there's one. Okay. Try again.
But we got.
Yay for what?
How long's it been out?
All day?
I'm a very analytical
my work
person,
phone
very
is
number oriented.
That's what I got.
Generally, I hate it,
But
but today it was.
Yeah, I don't like people.
Yeah. Nationwide, they just, yeah, it's just showing us unless you're on Wi-Fi.
Like, the few times I or somebody else brought them, it doesn't determine our right, that doesn't determine
My grandparents had something different. They said, yeah, you pick up the phone to call somebody, and you gotta wait until somebody's on the phone.
Yeah, no, I know.
Or you listen to what they
And
gotta
I
say.
have,
I just wonder if this means I can't do it
Have you ever
before them.
No.
opened up, I forget what they call it.
I'm gonna give it.
If you're on the internet,
How'd you end up with your job?
you can break out an analysis of what the students are not compared. It breaks it down into basic numbers. And then the more educated in math is about 4 It's very easy to see. You can see that, you know,
I mean, my dad was like,
one is the simplest one, mathematical methods. So then you go up to, it's mathematical methods. So now we're going to take numbers.
my son was coming back from Grand Rapids and he was on South. I said, so how many did you see in the ditch? She said, I saw 5 on the south side. And this one is Johnson Creek camera was broken out by state. 5 on the south side of the ditch, and the semi on the north Now, okay, you know, he was 94 years old, but 94 years old.
I was gonna get rid of it, but it's valuable. I really probably honestly. It's valuable because it's useful for school stuff. Like I'm on school, so you get messaging from the school and what's going on. It's how you with like, I will. So it's.
No, they did not because.
I understand all that.
Because I was like,
No, they didn't.
It's also,
I don't know what you
can
call
cause a lot of problems.
And I called her.
Because you increase the stuff.
it's why I post pictures of my family and I read about it. And I don't even.
Yeah, my wife.
It's a good way to stress
I'm sorry. I took it. Yes.
I make a motion to exit closed session.
Support.
Motion made by Supervisor Martin, supported by Treasurer Bloomfield. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Exited closed session. Is that fine to do a yes vote for that? Moving along to public comments. A citizen may state their name and address and may speak only one time for no more than, actually, we didn't really have a motion. So did we want?
Sorry, we don't have a closed session motion, so
Okay.
it's public comment.
Yep. A citizen may state their name and address and may speak only one time for no more than 3 minutes. This time may not be given to another citizen to extend their time. The person speaking has the floor, nor other citizen shall speak during someone else's time. During this time, you'll be making statements to the board without discussion from board members, but you're welcome to make an appointment with the supervisor or superintendent and discuss your comments further. Their contact information is located by the door. Please keep comments clean and respectful.
All right, clarification. So, you had mentioned that the FOIA was supposed to be responded to on the 29th. The actual date was the 24th. So, if we can just check up on that, or somebody can follow up on it.
Communicate with you
So-
outside. Yeah, we're not,
Okay.
this isn't question and answer.
So, no, and that's fine. And so if somebody can make sure that in the response that I get for the reduction, if somebody could clarify, because the response was supposed to be on the 24th, which was the date that was chosen by the township, and there was no response. And so the first time that did respond was the 31st, like Robert said. It wasn't the 29th, so there would be additional days in which I would get a reduction. So I just want to,
We'll do whatever's needed.
all right, that's it.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Tammy Keeler. Mr. Pratt, did you get the ruling on?
Please address the board.
Okay. I was just wondering if you got the ruling on Sandy's case. If you got the copy of it or not, that she did win her case. Plus, some of you on this board's got to go. I'm hearing more and more and more. And it seems like this stalking's getting a little bit too much. You want to stalk our veterans? You want to go down my street? I got one on there. Let's see how many times I go down my street the other day and go around the corner to William's house. Probably about 5-6 times. Slowing down in front of Williams, intimidating him. And I know who it is. because I know the make and model of what they drive. And I'm pretty sure that people have cameras on that know all about this. This is why we don't trust some of you, because of this happening. And like I said before, leave our vets alone. I don't know where they were stationed at or anything like that, the ones up there on the board, but this has got to stop. And this harassment on Facebook has got to stop, especially coming from one person. And I've seen all the comments from two people who started it with William and who's still keeping on with it. It better stop. It is a definition of his character and everything else. And I will stick up for the kid like I would my own. Anybody says anything about my son being a veteran, I swear to God, that is a promise, not a threat. I will take you to court. But this harassment by one of your board members has to stop today, because I will file charges. People do have cameras on their houses. And I know exactly who's doing it because I got the plate number and everything. That is called stalking. You want to stop in front of his house when he's not there? Fine. But I'm pretty sure that he can find out too, because he has cameras on his house. So let's just play this little game of pulling in front of my house, slowing down, and all that stuff. But I will turn it in. I'm done.
Thank you, ma'am.
I just got one thing to say. I sent an email off to one of the trustees about some comments that were made at the dais, and I have yet to receive a response. I even questioned them at the last board meeting. They had the opportunity to answer in member comments, as well as ample time to answer my email. I'm wondering, is not communicating back with your constituents a thing we're trying to do now?
Thank you, sir.
Hey, how's it going? I kind of watched the meeting at home, doing paperwork, everything like that. End of year stuff for a business is just fun. Let me tell you, start a business, they say. Be an entrepreneur. It's fun. I remember, way back when, beginning of the year and everything like that, we were all about transparency. We wanted to be transparent with people and everything like that. Not everyone that, has a FOIA request and everything like that can afford $800, $400, even $200 nowadays. This stuff is so tight in people's homes that, in my opinion, we already paid $40,000 for this whole entire investigation. Why do we need to worry about, as, taxpayers here, we need to worry about paying a FOIA request for something you just spent $40,000 of my money on? It should just be released for free, in my opinion. The whole entire thing with the Soil and Friends, that was either a township problem or a lawyer problem. And if I remember right, the lawyer told me it was our mistake. Well, if you run a good business, in my opinion, you told us it would be $2,000. It should be $2,000, not $20,000. Just in my opinion. You can't say you're going to charge us $2,000 and then fork out a $20,000 bill just because it took a little bit longer. That's not right in my opinion. So it's just one of those things that we need to stop that, it's going to cost the township too much. You already spent $40,000. Just fork over, another $1,000 to release the whole thing. And it's just, I'm just tired of the fighting. We need to get back to, not fighting and just start respecting each other. The last meeting, there was a lot of just, my opinion, hate thrown everywhere throughout the meeting, and it's not good. We need to respect each other. You treat someone how you want to be treated. If you start throwing stuff, accusations and all this stuff, how do you expect people to treat you? You treat people with respect of how you want to be treated. Again, the parking lot needs to be salted. It's pretty sad that my taxpayer money, we're having a meeting here, I step out of my truck, I'm about to slip and fall. I have a salter out there. Do I need to throw some salt for free or something? It's expensive now. It's about $220 per yard compared to $160 about 3 days ago. I understand, but my taxpayer money should have a clean parking lot when I come to a meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further citizen comment this evening? If there's no further comment, we'll be moving along to board member comment. Treasurer Bloomfield?
I have nothing this evening, thank you.
Trustee MacGyver?
Not the only, we had some good discussions tonight here in the open meeting, but I would like to see us get along better too, and we're gonna work on it, I'm pretty sure. And it shouldn't be a big deal, but I hope that like you people do, that things will smooth out a little bit going forward. Thank you very much for being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee MacGyver. Clerk Beauchamp?
I don't have anything this evening.
Trustee Pratt?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Trustee Amos?
I'm good.
Trustee Cherry?
Big surprise, right? This is on a personal note. I would love to thank whoever is sending the love card letters to my house, to my husband. That's a huge ego boost for him. So I really do appreciate that. Even though it's borderline stalking and borderline scary. But thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So, yeah. Thanks. Oh, and it is anonymous, so that's why I had to throw that out there, because it's completely anonymous. So they have the courage to actually send these love letters, but don't have the courage to sign them. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Cherry. I just want to thank the board for accepting the DDA appointments the last meeting, the Planning Commission appointments, and then we have some applications that are coming in for the Zoning Board of Appeals. Treasurer Bloomfield, Trustee Pratt, and I will likely conduct interviews next week. So if there's anybody else that wants to apply, you can send your application in, and it looks like we'll have full stock boards. So thank you all for attending this meeting. This meeting is adjourned.
You got time for me to put that computer in your office?
Yeah. Yep, we can do that.